Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today we are joined by serial entrepreneur and local businessman Phil Benson. Please like, subscribe, share. We're going up in terms of subscribers, but we want to go up faster and we need your help. And with all that said, welcome to Tomorrow's Workplace Today. I keep saying that you're an entrepreneur, but I need you to broaden that for me. So when I say you're an entrepreneur, what is it you do? What are the businesses that you're involved in, Phil?
That's a good question.
Is there a lot of them?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, but I guess when you talk about entrepreneurship, you're talking about, taking a risk and then using some sort of capital to move that forward. And I guess using taking it as a calculated risk in a sense. And I guess I've done that, but I've done that across different businesses, different industries, and not necessarily because I wanted to go out initially to set up a number of different companies, but initially it was out of necessity, sort of like a investment style portfolio where you needed to move from one area to another to mitigate risks, I guess, and offset risks, which were incurrent in different businesses which I was running at the time. So I guess like a serial entrepreneur would be the official title, but I just see myself as just someone who comes up with ideas and starts
investing stuff.
Yeah.
So I think when we first met, which I'm trying to think how many years ago that was now, but a few. I think you just come out of university, and you were involved in. Help me out. Was it milkshake business or food? Certainly the food and drink sector. Is that right?
Close. Yeah. So smoothie bar, health food.
Yeah. So start us from there then. So what was that? Was that your first business?
Yeah.
Okay. Describe what that was. What was it?
Yeah. So in going back now, 2006.
Yeah.
That's when I set that up.
Okay.
I was a graduate at Hull University and I studied business, and I was sort of massively inspired when I studied there to go into entrepreneurship, and it was something which I hadn't been aware of essentially. So at that time, it wasn't a buzzword. It wasn't anything, you sort of go to university and you're moving into some sort of graduate scheme or graduate job. So the idea of setting up a business didn't even come into my head. So it's the experiences which I had when I was in the States for a year studying business, part of my degree. And I took courses in entrepreneurship. Again, not with the intent or idea of setting up a business, but obviously with the US being, I guess, the free market specialist, if you want, the entrepreneurship capital of the world, essentially. It was inherent within their whole system of that sort of mindset and concept.
It's the American dream, isn't it?
That whole idea of an American dream and starting something from nothing. And so we had sort of an entrepreneur who came into our class to speak to us about business and setting up business and why it was important to fail at business and all this sort of thing, which was just, for me at the time, just pretty mind-blowing. And my experiences over there, I was into my sports, and you always sort of assume in America that it's always sort of like the fast food capital of the world as well, but actually there was a niche which was appearing, which was around smoothie bar concepts. And it was something, because I was playing a lot of sports at the time, I was constantly consuming after I'd finished training and that sort of thing. And I thought, wow, this is amazing, this is great. And so it was, I guess, a number of different elements and factors which sort of stuck in my head by the time I got back from there, to then, after I graduated, to think about what were going to be my next steps. And my business partner, Simon, at the time, he more or less was one of my best friends as well. We sort of crossed our experiences, we actually met over crossover there as well when he was in South Carolina and I was in North Carolina. We played rugby against each other and went to visit him and whatever. There was a hurricane, crazy stuff going on. And so I guess we found an opportunity to actually say, well, why do we just want to go down that normal path, and why don't we start something ourselves? And I remember the whole coffee bar industry had been exported, obviously, and come across to the UK and had taken off. And Richard Branson at the time said, that the smoothies were going to be like sort of the next big thing. And it was a concept where, I thought it was very innovative, because you could see all the products and the fruits and the veg and being juiced and made in front of you, but it's very convenient. It was quick. It was tasty. So it was sort of taking healthy eating to another level, and something which was accessible and made sense, in the same way that you go and pick up a burger from Mackie D's or whatever, but you could do that with something nicely packaged. And so that was where the inspiration for setting it up came from.
And how did you go from having that initial idea, that inspiration, to actually having a running kind of smoothie bar?
It was like, again, so there was no playbook for us at the time. It was literally a blank sheet of paper. That was it. And I think the only sort of advice organisations that were around at the time were like Business Link, if you remember them.
Do vaguely, yeah.
And it's sort of like bankers basically just saying, you need a business plan. And outside of that, weren't that much help, to be honest. And because we'd come from an academic background in terms of studying the whole business strategy idea and all these sorts of things. I remember reading Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point and a number of different books which were sort of like, I guess, formative. I think there was one called Guerrilla Marketing by Jay Levinson as well. That sort of gave us a structure to be able to write an amazing business plan. I think it was like a novel by the time we'd written it. But it was just, looking back, I'm thinking, what a waste of time that was. But we had a thick book, and we're talking about, I remember we used some stuff from Malcolm Gladwell's, talking about sneezers and people who are going to be the influencers, basically, for opinion leaders, for, moving our products and, trying our products and telling everyone about it, and all these sorts of things, putting all this academic terminology into this business plan. But this was because this was the advice which we were given. But actually the practical stuff, it was like, how do we get started? How do we do it? How do we register a business? How do we, where are we going to do it from? What's the health and safety regulation? What's the market we're going to, there's just so much. And we were just literally just learning, having to just figure it out as we went along. But that was exciting at the same time, because it was sort of like you're on this journey where you don't know where it's going to go. And on paper, it sounded easy just to set up a juice bar, but in reality, it was anything but. But because we were young, we were ambitious, and we really sort of believed it was going to happen, and what we can make it happen, and there's a massive gap in the market for it in this country. It just made that journey really exciting. So, as I say, there was no playbook. We wrote a business plan, but the business plan didn't do anything to help us set up the business. So we literally had to just figure it out as we went along.
Hi guys, just jumping in, I want to talk about one of the services we offer, which is robotic process automation, also known as RPA. That is software that replicates human behavior. So if you've got people downloading spreadsheets, attaching them to emails, going on portals, downloading information, moving data around, all that stuff is perfect for a robot. So if that's interesting, get in touch. Let's have a chat. Let's see if we can help. Enough from me. Back to the conversation.
So you two graduates got an idea. Excuse me, coming back from the States. How did you go about? You've written War and Peace as a business plan. How did you go about funding it? How did you get the funding apart from writing War and Peace?
So you're a graduate, you're skint. Student debt, all of that, yeah. There were some organisations in the city who were doing some amazing work with young entrepreneurs. So even though it was, we had to sort of sound them out and find them out. So at the time, there was the John Cracknell Youth Bank, which was sort of like working with really young entrepreneurs and giving them grant funding. Then we met some people in who were sort of like providing funding in the region. So there was a fund called Sirius Fund, which was available at the time, which was a BP one. But we had to figure out quite quickly, because we were buying sort of commercial equipment. We bought a mobile smoothie cart, which was what we started trading on, but it wasn't just like a tiki style one or whatever. It was like it's German made, half a ton, had a fridge, had lights, had all the mod cons, and we'd seen that, and we thought this would be a great way to start it in a lean startup way. So you're not sort of having to sort of invest in even though it was a big investment, you're not having to invest in sort of commercial property or anything like that. So you could de-risk it slightly. So wanted to try to keep our costs as low as possible.
It's interesting you were thinking that way already in terms of that lean startup. Was lean startup as a book out at that point? I don't know, probably not.
I'm not sure if it was. I've read it, but I know. Yeah, I'm not sure if I certainly hadn't read it at that point.
Yeah, but it just came naturally to think, how do I start small and.
Well, I think because initially my mate had a bar, and we said, well, should we just do it out of his kitchen in the bar area, and then. But because he was in the city centre, we could sort of distribute them to offices and stuff. So that was sort of like one of the ideas. And then we thought, well, there's loads of, things that are going on around the city centre, festivals and that sort of thing. So that's where our mind was. We thought, well, if we're going to do that, then we'd need something which was mobile. I say mobile, this was not really mobile. It had like literally 4 caster legs on this half a ton thing. So it wasn't very practical. It looked good, but it just wasn't very practical to move around.
And on the so you say that you would go to festivals and that kind of thing. On a day-to-day basis, how did you trade?
So obviously we got the cart. I'll answer that. Just go back to how we paid for it. So we worked in a pea factory. So like it's something that students always did, but you could earn a lot of money doing that. So it wasn't very glamorous, but it was necessary.
Yeah, it needs to be done.
Worked in an aerosol factory as well, which is, it's got some stories there, but anyway. And begged, borrowed and scrimped. So, our folks luckily gave us a little bit of money, not loads, but gave us a bit of money to get going. So we had enough to be able to cobble together what we needed, as well as the grant funding from a small amount of grant funding, which managed to buy us 1 blender. So like at the time, the Blendtec blender was like $1,000 to have one of these blenders, and we needed about 3 or 4 of them. So we did that, and then obviously buying this cart meant that we were able to do things like there were events which had been run in Queen's Gardens and stuff like that. So it was like sports relief style thing, folk festivals, jazz festivals, food festivals, that sort of thing. So that's where we were trading, and we had to buy frozen fruit because that's what we were using to make the products rather than fresh fruit. It had sort of the idea of the quality element of the product was going to be better using frozen at source and that sort of thing. You need to add ice, all those sorts of bits. But it meant we needed refrigeration, freezers, cool boxes, all those sorts of things. And then we'd have the disposable cups, and then have everything set up there. We'd have like the gastronome sort of pods with all the fruits in, so you could like see, I want that, ladles, and then you sort of pouring it in. When we had a menu made up, and then people sort of selecting which of the products which they wanted, and then we're sort of like blending it up in front of them. And it was great because it was, no one had seen anything like that in the city at the time. It was certainly, innocent smoothies at the time was starting to emerge, but wasn't, so smoothies weren't really a thing. So I think the novelty element around it was quite, I think people really bought into it. And then, parents were saying, oh, my kids this is the first time we've had fruit and veg, they'd never think about having anything like this, and this was actually a really good opportunity for them to try it, and they loved it.
Get the 5 a day.
Well, they said, I hate this, I hate that, I hate that, and we used to give up samples and used to lap it up. So yeah, so that was quite interesting to see how that changed people's mindset and view on the products as well. So yeah, but I remember on our very first trading day, I think we got the timings all wrong. And I think it was like it was one of the sports relief things. It was like a marathon, 5K or whatever, 10K. And we'd parked the van across where the start finish line was. So we had our cart on the one side and then our sort of stock across the other side. And I think the race had started, but then people had already were already converging as well around all the different food places. And so we had to run to get the frozen stock. And I just remember horrifyingly sort of carrying this bananas in this bag and box, and it broke and had like leaving a trail on the start finish line as we were running to get to the cart. So it's sort of like it was a baptism of fire, literally, just like two clowns trying to get started. Yeah.
And how long did it take you to turn a profit on that type of business? Was it quite quickly profitable and kind of funding now?
Well, okay, so in that context, because your overheads are, you pay a pitch fee, whatever, relatively low, then, we weren't making big bucks at all, but we were making, a little bit of money. But it wasn't until we moved that cart into the Hull Students' Union, so that's where we asked to be based. It took a lot for us to get there in the end, but we managed to do it. That's a story in of itself. But then obviously because of that, you're having other overheads and costs, which then meant, basically the amount of time that we were basically working for nothing. Literally. Tough. Yeah.
And so from that, I say humble beginnings, but strong beginnings, but how did you kind of grow that business? How has that business evolved over the last decade or so?
Yeah, so, moving into the Students' Union was our first step to sort of like being in a physical place, still de-risked with using the cart. We were told it wasn't going to work in that location. We turned up with a cart originally, so that's what in the sports centre, that's where it was being stored, but we didn't tell them that we're bringing it on that day, and we'd actually forgotten to bring the ramp, so I had to break down a door to get the cart off the van. And I remember they put like a boxing pad underneath it to keep the weight because it's so heavy. But we'd been in discussions for a long time to be able to get a spot in the Students' Union, and we sort of like had to force a hand in a way, and sort of it's that idea of asking for forgiveness rather than permission at the time. But it did accelerate the talks, which enabled us to actually start trading there. But we brought in more memberships for the sports centre, and so because of that and the success that we're getting from people coming from across the campus into the main Students' Union, into the sports centre, which didn't have a necessarily high footfall because it was a bit separate from the main campus. They wanted us to actually start trading on the main campus within the main Students' Union, so we had like a fully built bar within the main catering area. So that was our start of sort of like properly going for it, if you like. And quite quickly, I think about a year in, we were approached by this coffee company who were in multiple universities across the UK, and they approached us and said, "Look, we love the concept. Would you be interested in, working with us in all these different universities? We can get you into every, hundreds of universities basically, under some sort of franchise model using our brand."
What is the brand? Sorry,
it was Zing Smoothies with an X. And we thought that was it. We thought we'd made it. And we were sort of like, a couple of years in, 2-3 years in, we're thinking, wow, this is amazing. This is, literally within a space of, this short time scale, we're going to be a national company. But when we had those discussions, we felt it wasn't going to be quite right for us. We felt that the deal on the table at the time wasn't going to be really where we wanted to be.
In what sense?
I think they were a lot older than, obviously, so you'd expect a lot older than us. We were very young, but we had the way our brand was. Our strapline was "Feel Great, Have Fun." So we were very, the way we used to target this. We knew the student market really well. Obviously, just graduating, we knew exactly what we wanted. So we were positioning it in a way which was very, we used to do crazy stunts and stuff at Freshers Week and dress up and get people thinking,
get into the vibe of it.
Yeah, get into the proper mix of it. And we felt if we went with this coffee company, we'd be sort of a bit more restricted in terms of how we'd be able to do that, because actually we were successful because we were selling stuff in a different way and we were doing it in a very functional way as well. So it wasn't just you're having a refreshing drink. It was very it's going to cure your hangover or going to help you. You're a student, you don't have that much you're eating pot noodles and all the other crap. So actually this is your opportunity to get something decent, things like wheatgrass shots, which we used to get queues for. I wouldn't say it's like crap, but people used to love it. And just the idea of thinking I'll get half a pound of green stuff in my down my gut, it really worked. So it was just a number of different things. Financially as well, we felt we were going to be losing out a bit as well. So I think there was a number of factors where we just felt, although on paper it sounded amazing, it just didn't really transpire. We had number of negotiations, but yeah, it just didn't transpire. So we actually decided to go and do it ourselves.
Looking back, was that a good decision?
It's hard to say because we've taken a different route because of it. So in a context of us doing it ourselves, it was probably the wrong decision, because we franchised to two universities. First one was Liverpool University, and we franchised to John Moores University as well. And we had to learn very quickly, what that meant in terms of franchising your brand. And it was really interesting because we were franchising to an organisation which was their students' union. Now, when you're franchising, traditionally in a franchise model, you want to franchise to somebody who's got that same passion as you and drive to make something happen. When you're franchising to an entity, it completely changes that dynamic. So we had members within that students' union where there was high staff turnover, where people weren't consistently monitoring things. So it just meant our part of that puzzle was missing. So we used to do, checks. We used to go up and see how it was going, and there'd be someone behind a bar who was supposed to be selling our products, and they just didn't have a clue what was going on. Or there's even one scary point where it was a new person, but we didn't even know that they sold smoothies. And as soon as that happened, we said, yeah, we're gonna have to pull this.
Did you do it on like a secret shopper basis?
Yeah.
But it can undermine your brand, can't it?
100%. Yeah, 100%. We knew it was going to be damaging our brand because, we had that full control in terms of what we were doing, giving it to somebody. And we did, we had all the training manuals. So, we had all that part to it. But as I say, if it's not someone who's
as passionate as you
and leading it,
it's going to dilutes
it, and then it just has the directions lost in terms of how are we going to move this forward, how are we going to move this forward, how we go, all of that wasn't there. And so we figured out quite quickly, we needed to pull it. So in that respect, it might have been better to have gone with a coffee company who've already got an established base, and potentially that would have sat alongside them. But it also opened up other avenues which might not have been possible.
What were those avenues?
First one was schools.
Okay.
So we got a primary school teacher who actually came to our very first mobile cart one, and he used to train in the gym, and he said, look, our kids would love this in terms of what you're doing. I do an after school healthy kids club. Our kids would love it. So we went in there, we did a talk about benefits of fruit and veg, little workshop sort of thing, got them making the products. And then they started ordering on a regular basis from us. So we used to email us and say, I want 10 strawberry bananas or whatever it was, tell us how much it was going to cost. And we thought, yeah, this is great. We're going into schools and we're sort of creating an awareness for young people about what they're eating, their diets, and trying to do it in a creative way. So that led us to then think about going into schools on another level in terms of, can we build this to an audience who wouldn't ordinarily be probably receptive, which was sort of like the secondary school market. Yeah. This is where we turned it into sort of like a business enterprise workshop sort of thing. So we went into to secondary schools and we said, look, create, design your own smoothies and come up, market it. How, what are the benefits? Who are you going to sell it to? All those sorts of things, and then making the products themselves. And then, so simultaneously as that was happening, we set up. We were approached by a couple in York, and they were running a juice bar in York on the Shambles. And husband and wife, and I think fortunately they were divorcing, whatever. So the business, so we wanted to sell the business, had heard us on the radio, and they said, "Look, would you be interested in taking this on?" And so that led us onto the high street at that point, and for us it made sense only because we were trading within a university context. We were only trading 38 weeks of a year because of the term time. So we were needing to fill in those gaps in terms of our downtime. Obviously, there were things like festivals still going on, whatever, but we still needed something which was a little bit more consistent. So actually, the high street made sense in that regard, but obviously that was a whole another beast, an animal. So we had the high street and then had the schools thing. And one thing we did with each of those, so going into the schools, we used to do it like a competition where the winning team would then get the opportunity to sell their winning smoothie in our shop. So it sort of gave them that. But then we felt, well, why do we just want to restrict it to one day? So we decided that we wanted to set up a permanent enterprise within the school themselves. So we actually worked with Archbishop Centenary Academy, really forward-thinking head teacher, Andrew Chubb, who was really keen on inspiring young people about setting up their own businesses and entrepreneurship. And we sort of had to go through a lot of hurdles and hoops to figure out could we do a smooth student-run smoothie bar in a school. And it was something which organisations, for example, like Young Enterprise and whatever, didn't do, because it was sort of like a food-based business, that sort of thing. But we were really passionate about trying to get that in schools. So we managed to do that. We worked with Andrew Chubb and we got our first smoothie bar set up there. And
run by the pupils.
So we went in, we did the training, and then they were selling it. So lunchtime, break time, that sort of thing. Parents' evening, sports days, whatever it was, they had that flexibility. Brilliant. And they used to keep 100% of the revenue. We made our revenue through training and through supplying the stock, because obviously we were able to buy, get economies of scale, all that sort of thing. So it was a great model. And that sort of introduced me into the sort of social enterprise side of things as well, in terms of saying, can you make money and do good at the same time, which I thought was an amazing concept to think about when you're running a business. And then that's when the idea of franchising then went into schools. So it didn't matter that a kid would make a mistake on our smoothie bar, because actually the whole concept was completely different to what we were doing, trying to franchise into universities. So we teamed up with someone who was a specialist in enterprise education, and he loved what we were doing, and we ended up sort of franchising into schools across the country: London, Wales, Liverpool, Manchester. We worked in was a school which had pupils who had disabilities, and they just wouldn't have had that opportunity to have that work experience in a safe environment. So actually it was a great opportunity to do that, working with NEETs as well, so people who were out of employment, and giving them, so whether it's like community centres and that sort of thing. So and then scaling right down to primary schools. So we actually had primary schools who were actually running their own smoothie bar businesses. So that was, I guess, in terms of impact, one of the biggest things, and one of the, I guess, where we'd diverted to once we realised the university route wasn't going to be the right route. But then, as I say, that was all sort of happening simultaneously alongside a high street business, which at that time was failing.
And this is at the Shambles?
Yeah.
You took that, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we took it. Yeah. And we took it, and I think we always knew it was going to be a big step, taking something of that magnitude. And yes, you do have the footfall, you do have the people there, but with that comes cost, competition, all those elements. And I think we tried to sort of drop what was working really well in the university setting into a high street model, and sort of completely got it wrong in terms of our market.
What would you do differently then? Like, if you did that again, would you do it, but do it differently, or would you just not have done it at all?
Well, as it stands now, it's I'm not in it anymore, but it's doing really well at the moment in its current form, which is street food, sandwiches, that sort of thing. But at the time, 100%. Like we had to go through. I said it almost killed everything that we'd built. So it would have, if we'd lost that when we lost the schools, we'd have lost the university. Everything would have gone. And we were that close. So sort of I think we launched in the summer, which was a good time to launch. But people's perception was, this is a summer drink. This is like, something that I'm just going to have like an orange juice or whatever. They weren't thinking in the mindset of, oh, this is an energy boost before I play football, or a flu fire, or any of those sorts of things. So, and that was a problem. And obviously, and the reason why smoothies didn't take off the way coffee did is because, climate, that's why it's so successful in America, because it's so hot. Where we were, it was so hot, it was humid, so that's why there was so many bars and stuff going on there. Whereas here, it was completely different. And so people didn't receive that product in the same way as I would do a coffee. So we had to quickly try to iterate. We tried to do that 2 or 3 times, invest in additional money to try to change a concept before we got it right in a way, but it didn't happen overnight. And as I say, we were very close to sort of losing everything at that point.
Okay, me again, just jumping in to talk about one of the processes that we often get asked to automate, which is the processing of supplier invoices, also known as accounts payable automation. So what does that mean? Well, most businesses receive invoices from their suppliers, and a lot of businesses still have people that are manually reviewing those invoices, making sure that they're correct, making sure they're accurate, and then manually rekeying them into a finance system or an ERP system. Well, our solution can automate that process. So typically an invoice will come in, we'll use capture technology to understand what's on that invoice. We'll then match that data up against goods received note to make sure that we've received the product. We'll match it up against purchase order data to make sure that somebody has placed an order for that product. And ultimately, if we can match that up, we can automatically push that into an ERP system or finance system, and nobody has to touch it. How good does that sound? If there are exceptions, if there are things that need to be checked, that's fine. We can use digital workflow to push that to somebody to eyeball it and say, is this correct, or does something need to change? Ultimately, though, that can then be pushed again into an ERP system or a finance system. This is about making your life easier. It's about making operations as quick and as efficient as possible. And we do that all the time. If that sounds interesting, then get in touch. That's enough from me. Back to the podcast.
So you said that at the start that you're a serial entrepreneur. So this one, like you said, got really close. I hate to think the sort of stress levels involved in that, but it obviously didn't put you off. So what other areas have you kind of gone into to feed that entrepreneurial sort of appetite?
Well, so there's always, if you look at Ansoff Matrix and stuff, and you look into like whether it's new markets, product diversification, that sort of thing. It was always when opportunities came, it was like, is that something which you can do and which you can build on to make that a business? So when we were approached, for example, when we were doing the smoothies, and someone said, actually, we started doing end of year balls and putting booze in it. So all of a sudden now we're making, daiquiris and margaritas in a frozen style cocktail and that sort of thing. Now that opened up some doors for us in terms of other avenues that we looked into. So we ended up, after, trying to get into venues and that sort of thing to sell those sorts of products. And so, we ended up getting a contract with race courses and stuff where we actually do that now. And so that was a new market, new product in a way, but using the experience that we'd already gained.
Yeah.
So obviously when you're setting something like that up, then it's like, what's next? What do we need to do to grow this? Because, to stay doing the same isn't going to get you to the next level. And it's interesting because it sort of led, I guess, the experience of setting up something makes it easy to set up other things. Yeah. But it doesn't make it easy to run that business, because there's going to be different challenges. But the process sort of remains the same in the sense of what you need to do. You need to find finance, you need to find, all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But you can't underestimate then what the direction that you need to take to be able to make that stick and make it work. So after sort of doing that, I had, especially doing alcohol, doing cocktails, in 2017, there was an opportunity for me to do a joint venture with City of Culture, so I was sort of setting that up. I set that up with City of Culture, the Humber Street Gallery, which I sort of ran as a cafe and bar, rooftop bar. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of like a new challenge in terms of in the creative sector, because there's sort of like a rotating art gallery and all the rest of it. And I was on a board as well, actually, at the time for City of Culture, which was great. So that was a new project, standalone project, but then I was using, again, the experiences which I had within my existing businesses to be able to say, well, actually, can I use this to enhance what I'm already doing? So that meant actually I was able to then use that as a base to not just in of itself, but for other stuff, other events that we were getting involved with. So we were asked to be, doing like corporate events, going down to London with a team to do sort of like, hospitality stuff and whatever. And this was all coming from a Hull-based company. So I sort of stuck to where my knowledge and expertise were, but then able to sort of spot opportunities and say, okay, when I need to set up something where I feel it's going to add value to what we're currently doing, I will. And that led me into event, I think 2018, I got into retail, which was by chance, but it was just one of those where I felt there wasn't an offer in the current area of the fruit market. So I said, look, we need to do something where we can get people to, there's more people living here. There's not, it's an island and there's no shop here. Why not? But I didn't want to just do it as a shop. So I built up contacts with a number of different local producers. So whether it was a coffee roaster or a beer maker, with breweries and that sort of thing. I thought, can we create something where we're getting new, exciting produce on the shelves in a different way, as well as selling general daily essentials. So again, it had a link and a theme in with the food and drink which I had expertise in.
That's still around. So that's an independent,
yeah,
like a convenience store, but it's more of a high-end one in terms of independent products and
independent products, producers. So you can still get your newspapers, you can still get your tobacco, you can still get all of that.
Yeah.
But we focus on getting unique products on the shelf. And
is Zing still operating?
Zing still operates
in schools.
Okay. Yeah. More on a workshop on a workshop basis, more than the because again, so when we went into schools setting up these franchises, we were very, although they were very successful, because there were, some schools made some serious dosh from it. So some kids were like getting paid wages, or they'd be investing it into other projects, which would then create other businesses within schools, that sort of thing. But we faced a problem where you still needed somebody within that environment to lead it, and teachers are under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of things on their plate. So if you have that teacher who we connected with, it's not there anymore, or had to move on or do something else, then who's going to lead that? Because they still needed someone to be able to lead it within their school. So that's where we eventually found, I think, and it probably systematic of what's going on in schools at the moment, but where, teachers were enthusiastic and wanting to really do this and saying, look, these are the sorts of things we should be doing for our kids in schools, but actually we're being burdened by all these other things which we have to take on now. It made it difficult to be able to try to sustain that. So we still have some operating, but it's more on a workshop basis rather than actually selling it.
In terms of a trading entity where I can now buy a smoothie, does that not exist anymore?
Not in that.
Not in the shop.
No.
Okay.
No, not in the shop. No.
On the shambles that's more of a sandwich.
Yeah,
so
that's evolved into street food, and we had to, it was necessity. So you can still buy juices, but it's very minimal. It's focused on a sandwich concept. I exited in 2018, but by then we moved into the street food, and we got to like number 1 on TripAdvisor, even though we weren't chefs or anything like that. We brought in a consultant chef to help us out, and it was before sort of street food was a thing, I guess, at the time. But yeah, we had to do something. And when we first started, we got it all wrong because we had like a massive menu and just didn't do it.
There's a lot of value to that, though, isn't there? Getting it wrong. So Zing's been a great learning experience.
Yeah,
by the sound of it.
Yeah, it's foundational in terms of learning. Thinking you've got a plan and a vision, which is important, but then saying actually there will be bumps or whatever. They're
arguably as valuable as the stuff that you get right, I think.
The learnings, 100%. I think, and that was certainly one of the key lessons from my time in America, which I still sort of keep in my head, was actually you were not considered to be an entrepreneur unless you'd failed. That was like seen as a badge of honor.
So on that then, do you now help emerging or wannabe entrepreneurs? And if you do, it sounds like by nodding your head you do. Do you let them make the same mistakes that you did, or do you direct them down a route? Or better question, how do you coach them?
I think it's important to not, if you can learn what mistakes other people have made, I think it's important not to replicate that, because there's people who've trodden that same path, and there's a reason why, not in all instances, but there's a reason, if you can figure out what went wrong, what happened, and what am I going to maybe not do, I think that's important. That's not to say that I do value failure in the sense of the learning that you get from it. But ideally, if you can learn before taking that step, and it still doesn't, if it still doesn't work at that point, then at least you've taken steps to mitigate. Because at the end of the day, you don't set up a business to fail, right? You want to be successful, but it is character building in many ways, and it's inevitable in many ways as well. If you look at the statistics of businesses, I think 1 in 5 in the first year will not succeed, and then the longer you go on, I think in the first 3 years, again probably about 60%, 3 in 5 will go out of business. So you're more likely to fail the longer you go on as a startup. So there's going to be things which people have done which you can learn from, but then there's going to be stuff where you just can't avoid it. And I think that's what you just got to be, you got to be conscious of that and be ready for it, and say, actually, what am I going to do to mitigate that? You can put every contingency plan in the world, but there's always going to be something which you will not have thought about, and something that's going to hit you over the head,
Yeah, if you could wind the clock back 14, 15, 16 years, however long since you started that first business, what are the kind of one or two things that you would do differently?
So I've just recently set up a e-commerce business off the back of my retail business, and I'm doing a lot of work in the tech sector at the moment, especially trying to increase representation and innovation in the tech sector, which I feel so essential in the current climate that we live in post-Brexit. And one thing which, I come from an F&B background, as I've gone through, but now, sort of finding myself in e-commerce and then also doing stuff in tech and working with some massive tech companies and stuff like that. So I wish I was able to have come from a place where I'd learnt to code and that I realised what the value of technology is to every single facet of life that we do. So it never was in my mindset at the time, because I was doing a business degree, and obviously my journey's taken me into these other aspects. But if I knew what I knew now, then I'd certainly wish that that's where I'd put a lot of my effort into that side of things. And I think it's as important as reading and writing, doing maths. I think every kid needs to learn how to code.
That's a good point.
What plates are you currently spinning then? So you've got the retail thing, you've got the e-commerce. Zing's now in the past for you, is it?
It still exists apart from schools, yeah. Events still exists.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're still doing contracts with, so you'll find as a sort of yacht race course. Or,
with a cart?
No.
Right.
We've got a mobile unit which we use as well, but we've also got a built bar within the yacht race course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
And then, in 2017, I mentioned I co-founded UK Black Tech. Now, I met up with a few technologists, and it was through education, actually, because we built an app and stuff for some of the workshops and whatever that we'd done. But we're looking at, how do we try to make strides in terms of products and services that are being created in the tech world, because we're finding that there were many barriers to entry for people getting into technology, but also some of the products and services which were being created weren't, in many cases, fit for purpose, and were sometimes isolating certain groups and marginalizing certain groups of people, which is, I'll give you an example. If you've got Uber drivers were struggling to work because the facial recognition technology wasn't taken into account, the facial features or skin color, that sort of thing. Now, these are things which should be, easy to solve, but because they're not being looked at in that lens, then all of a sudden it becomes a monumental problem. And when you're having things which become monumental problems, and that actually creates friction and problems in society, which we need to make sure that everyone's able to participate and make a living or contribute. So when you've got products and services, and there's so many examples of this, which sometimes gets overlooked. So you've got that side of it. But then, as I say, the talent, we always talk about talent and how we need more talent. The talent's there, but the opportunity isn't always there. So actually, how do we harness getting the people who want to, who are the future innovators, who are the people who are going to be, creating the next big thing? How do we make sure that we're giving them an opportunity to showcase who they are, showcase their skills, all those sorts of things, and and how do we get the best ideas? Because that's what that's what it's about. How do we get the best ideas? And you're not going to get that in a silo. So that's what UK Black Tech was created, was to create
What's causing
that.
them silos though?
I think it's people's experiences, like people's experience. If you're used to a certain thing, you look at all the statistics tell you that there's a lot of discrepancies, and there's always, you're always going to expect some discrepancies and imbalances. But when you're looking at VC funding for minority or underrepresented groups, so low. I think less than 1%.
Oh, there we go.
Or something like, and so there's organisations which are coming in to try to bridge that gap. But you're thinking, well, how many great ideas are not being funded right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Because of that, and it's scary. So I think but because if you're used to a certain, like obviously in the States, you'd be used to sort of like people coming from Stanford or coming through Y Combinator or whatever, and you're just sort of having that same train of people, the network, you networked into a certain, place element, and then so you're overlooking other areas, you're overlooking other people who could be really doing something transformational.
Do you think it happens in this region?
So it's interesting because I think it happens in this region, but I think also our region gets, as a whole, will get overlooked versus the South.
Yeah. So it's double whammy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what could businesses in this region do more of?
So I think, well, there's a number of things. I think first of all, it's acknowledge it. It's like saying, what do we need? What do we need to make what we do here successful? And what's happening outside of our region that we're not getting here? So I used the example before about VCs, and VCs aren't the answer to everything, but what we do know is those companies who are traditionally funded through those sorts of vehicles tend to have better opportunities of survival, of expertise, of all those sorts of things which will enable businesses to succeed. If you don't have that access to capital to be able to do that, then it makes it harder. You're already at a disadvantage. So I think the network, that sort of networked feature that we sort of seem to be lacking here, needs to be built in a way which allows us to tap into the talent that exists here and the expertise that exists here as well. I think, as I say, I think just being exposed to what's going wrong. I think because if you don't acknowledge that things are going wrong, then you can't change it. So I think it's just being aware, and I'm not going to use the word get political with this, but when you talk, when people talk about woke, all for me, it's just saying, look, just be open to things. Like, don't just be in your own head and your own ideas about things, because that's not the way life works. So just be open to what's going on around you, and essentially, you think we all live here to, we don't live here as individuals. Everyone, whether you're in your business, whether you're in your neighborhoods, whether you're in a social setting, we everyone lives on this planet as a community. We can't exist without that. So actually, how do we create a better I don't want to sound too idealistic here, but how do we create a better society for us all so that we all thrive? Because if we don't all thrive, then there's going to be discourse. When there's discourse, then people get angry, and people, want to fight each other and disagree with each other. So actually, what are we doing to say, can we create better opportunities for everybody? Because everybody wins. It shouldn't, I think many times we think of things, if you win, then you have to lose. That's zero sum, and that helps nobody. So actually, it's about trying to say, how do we uplift everybody so that everyone wins? Rise that tide. And I'm not saying people shouldn't have, there's always going to be discrepancies in so many different ways, but it doesn't mean that someone has to be at the bottom of the barrel, does it?
Is education helping in a way in terms of the accessibility into education, into tech at a young age for minority groups?
I think so. The great thing about tech is anyone can get involved. You know, it will open doors in so many ways. There's so many opportunities which didn't exist previously, which exist now. So that's, you know, and that's through some amazing technology that's been developed, and I think people's awareness of that as well. But I think the awareness in particularly in schools is essential for that, in terms of access. But there's still a problem, and you know, if you think about certainly in academia, you're probably going to get most people from Oxbridge, whatever, who will still get better opportunities. So, and I guess it's the nature of the beast, but I reckon that will change soon, because actually things are evolving. It's going to be a lot of disruption. You know, you can probably learn everything you need to learn on YouTube now.
Or ask a ChatGPT.
Or ask a chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, like so that's you know, and this is what I love about technology, is it's disruptive, and you know, as long as it's disruptive in the right way, where it's creating better opportunities, and I think that's the right way of doing it, and anyone can get involved in it. So I think you know, for me it's just about saying, can we try to level the playing field where people can start the race in the same position, and then whoever goes further, great.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, as I'm running a business. We call ourselves a tech business, not in the strictest sense that we're creating something new. We're not a manufacturer of technology, but we nevertheless class ourselves as a tech business. So as a leader of a tech business, what's helpful to me is to know where we're doing something wrong, or where we're missing an opportunity or missing a trick. Because our approach to recruitment, for instance, is across the board, and it's, I would say, the right person for the job in terms of our mentality. Whether or not we're inundated or not with applicants from a wider sort of range of sort of life, I guess. I don't actually know the answer to that. I don't know if it's where we are locally or what's going through the education system in this region. I'm not sure what's holding us back from having a more diverse workforce, for instance. I don't know what we can practically do to improve that situation and give ourselves a more level playing field.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's a more complicated question.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like, but it's a right question.
Yeah.
It's a right question, and I don't think it can be answered, you know, really quickly in this. But one thing I will say is, you know, is where are you looking for talent? Because if you're looking at in the same places for talent, then you're going to get the same thing. So, so it's about broadening, you know, where are we actually looking at recruiting?
Yeah.
And I've always said as well, you know, I love Hull. That's why I've stayed here. As an entrepreneur, I feel it was the best place for me to have set up my business, because I was afforded a great business community that existed here. You know, people who I could pick up the phone to, seasoned entrepreneurs, which I probably might not have been able to get in some other cities. So there's so much that benefits of being an entrepreneur in this city that I feel, and it, you know, and you know what I'm doing now, it doesn't matter where I'm based, but I can be, but being here for me, I think gives me a bit of an edge. So, and I think sometimes, especially in Hull, we tend to we do great things, we're doing great things in this city, and we don't necessarily always shout about it.
No.
So because we're not shouting about it, you know, it's not arrogance. I think it's just saying, look, we are doing great things and you can be a part of it. Now, you know, what's going to make someone move from London to come to Hull or whatever? But we saw what was happening during COVID. We saw people were selling up the housing, saying, I don't want to be part of this rat race I'm moving to somewhere where I can get affordable housing, nice garden, better living standards, all those sorts of things. That's an opportunity for talent, because you can get people in. So I think it's how you position it, how this region positions itself, how companies position themselves, where they look for talent, and being open-minded. Because I think sometimes, you can be, it can be quite scary as well when you're not used to doing something different, or you're taking on people you wouldn't ordinarily take on. So, but, every single statistic will show you that the more diverse workforces will outperform those which aren't. But it's just basic common sense, right? If you're getting views from a wide range of different places, then you're going to create innovation. That's how innovation happens.
What's the future look like for you? Do you have like a grand plan of where you're going to be in 5 years' time? Or it strikes me that you've evolved your business over time, looking for opportunities and taking those doors. Is that you're going to continue to evolve it, or do you have I'm going to be here in 5 years' time? The business is going to be like this.
I'd love to be in the next sort of, I still love what I do, still love running businesses. I guess, I feel it's the best job in the world, the most stressful job in the world, but also the best job in the world, because I can wake up and I can do what I want, and I can dream something and say, can I make that happen? And try to put steps in place to make that happen. That to me is irreplaceable regardless of anything. But it's tiring. It's tiring. So yeah, I think, I think as soon as I lose my passion for that, then my bigger plan, I guess, would be, I'd love to be an angel investor. I'd love to see other companies thrive, give advice on that basis as well, in terms of how can I help other businesses who are going through some of the challenges and things which I've experienced. How can I help and assist and, move a needle? Because actually, it's entrepreneurship is what's going to underpin any nation's success. And without that, then we just won't be able to be at the level where we need to be. We won't have a level of innovation which is going to, especially in this country, that we're going to need. So I'd love to be in that position where I'm able to do that on more on a full-time basis, and hopefully help other businesses and give back to especially to this region in terms of what it's given back to me.
Just what you were saying near the end there, though, Phil. I don't think the region's too bad, but evidently it could be better. It's the marketing of the area
100%.
and getting it out there. And I also think, on the subject of getting more minority groups, if that's the right saying, into like the tech sector, I think that will change with the way that technology is now, like you said, making it way more accessible, and maybe for our children's generation, that's when there won't be any boundaries. You mentioned about Oxbridge and things like that. I think give it 5-10 years when they're all coming out of school or going into, some might go, do you know what? And we've got a lad downstairs. He's like a really bright lad, but he's like, do you know what? I don't want to go to university because I'm going to go and do that. But as we were saying, actually, now that there's all sorts of stuff that's just accessible. My son, I sell technology, and I've got probably a very loose, and I've got enough of an understanding to be able to sell the concepts and then get clever people downstairs to make it happen. Whereas my son, some of the stuff he comes in and says, Dad, and I'm like, whoa, but you sell it, Dad. Yeah, not quite like that, son.
And they're doing it just like once upon a time we did geography.
Yeah.
They're now doing it as part of the curriculum.
100%.
Yeah,
digital natives.
100%.
Yeah. That challenge, that question mark over diversity or having more ethnically diverse people in tech. It's the same argument or same debate around women in tech.
100%.
And
100%. And you think, but you think about this, right? Because you've got women in tech, which is a problem as well, and there's amazing women technologists who you know exist. So you think you think about women, think about maybe disabled as well. But think if you're a woman, disabled, and you're black.
By default or whatever it is, proportionately, we're statistically speaking likely to get more white male applicants because it's a larger proportion of the population. across the country. It's a larger proportion of the population in the region. We don't. But when a female or a black applicant comes along, whatever, we don't. Obviously we're not discriminatory in any way. It's just proportionately there are a few applicants. I just don't know what we can do as an employer to increase that number or whatever.
And I think as well, like, it shouldn't be. And I think sometimes it gets put into being a tick box sort of thing where
definitely
we
not,
have to,
positive discrimination.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be going down that route. But I guess the point is saying, what are you doing which is actively being positive. We talk about positive script, but positively finding candidates who won't necessarily always apply to you. So where because
where
you're looking, because I think if you're showing that, then it's saying actually you're thinking about the best thing for your business, because you're essentially looking for the best candidates.
Yeah.
But sometimes you've got to think, well, why is it this? You're right in terms of proportion, whatever. But why is it that these certain subsection of people are applying? Because where are they seeing this information? And actually, is this because we've built a network of around 25,000 technologists, right? Everyone, anywhere from junior dev right up to.
So we need to widen our net as a recruiter, because we're always recruiting, and we're occasionally struggling with recruitment in certain areas.
I think let's leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us, Phil.
Brilliant. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks a lot, guys.